Hey everybody, it's Gil here with the Sailing Vessel Dream Chaser. It is sunny for the first time since before Christmas, so I am about to get started and do a little bit of work I need to do right down here on this mast boot. Let me show you what I've got going on. So this here is the mast boot, and right in this section here is where I believe water is starting to intrude into the boat. When I cut this piece of wood, there was a piece of wood that kind of went all the way around this. You can see the difference in deck shape there. That was what held on the belaying pin rack. When I cut it, I cut in here a little too far. And sadly, what's occurred now is water runs across the deck because they glass right up to it, and it comes right into this spot, and it kind of gets underneath this wood. So I'm going to fill this with thickened epoxy where I cut it here and in this corner right on the forward side. I'll fill that with thickened epoxy, and then I'm going to actually sand this down. I'm going to grind this part of the deck down to bare glass, and I'm going to glass from here up the side of this, and then I'm going to 5200 along the edge here. I know it sounds like a permanent solution, but quite frankly, I'm okay with that. If I need to remove this for some kind of major repair, I'll be happy to do that at a later date, and I'll cut 5200 and fiberglass away, but I'd rather have this leak proof. The good thing is behind this mast boot is a heavy duty hard plastic collar rather than shims. So to pull the stick, none of the work I'm about to do here on the deck would impact that. So
what's the plan for today? What are you doing?
Today I'm going to finish up in the salon. Got a couple more cupboards to go through and just purge and get rid of crapola. Then I'm going to start working on the girls' rooms so I can get those ready to varnish and the floor redone.
Very nice. And she's packed away the Christmas tree, so that has to get away somewhere. All right.
Goes back to the storage unit.
What are you doing today, McKinley, while we're on the boat?
Gonna watch TV.
Okay.
And playing.
And playing? Perfect agenda, huh?
So the good news is I went ahead and get this thing ground down. It didn't take long at all. I mean, literally a 10-minute job. It took longer to set up and clean up than it did to do the work. So let me kind of show you what I have here, and I'll show you what it looks like before I'm going to start prepping it for the thickened epoxy and then ultimately laying the glass down. So here we go. You can kind of see here. Here you go, just around the four sides of this particular mast step and column. It's a little tougher to see in the shaded area here. Let's see how well it adjusts to it. I got the same sort of thing here on the shaded side.
Trying to get cupboards emptied out, and I don't know that we need that in this cupboard. Wait, the pump? Let's put it in.
It's not a pump, it's an empty box.
Oh, that's you.
It is me. I think it's an empty box. Maybe the old one's in there. I wonder what's in there. You should check it out.
Nope.
Well, now that I've gone ahead and sanded that down and ground it down to fiberglass and then wiped everything down with acetone, I'm now ready to put the thickened epoxy in that section of the corner there. So the first step here is just going to be mixing up my epoxy. Got a couple of the tools of the trade. I just use these little red throwaway cups when I'm mixing up really small amounts. Wide craft sticks work really well, and some Ziploc bags. Use this like a piping bag. I'll show you in a minute. So get a few pumps going here. I'm using the West epoxy system here. I use the 105 resin, and I'm using the 205 fast hardener because I have a very small amount to do. Otherwise, I would be using my slow hardener. I'm just going to do 3 pumps of each. I like it because you can use these little dispensing pumps, and frankly, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to cover these up or seal them. I just leave them sitting in this little bin here, and they're kind of ready to go anytime I am. All right, I've got my 3 pumps in here. Just going to mix for a good 60 seconds. While I'm mixing that, I'll kind of talk a little bit about this. I use these, there's a lot of different fillers, but frankly, I use this one from Mar Pro. I buy it at a local supplier here that supplies a lot of stuff for commercial fishing industry. But what I like about it is this is fairly inexpensive. So if I'm doing something that I want to be good adhesion, I'm not worried about the finished look or the ability to ferret. I like using these micro balloons. They're inexpensive. They're a good binder and a thickener. Stuff is interesting. It's kind of almost like a powder, but it sort of packs. It reminds me of some of that kid's play sand that is dry but sort of shapeable. It's like that. I'll give you an idea. If I touch this, it sort of packs, but it is like really a fine powder kind of thing. It takes quite a bit. It takes about the same amount of resin as thickener to get a peanut butter consistency, which is what I want. Something that I can put in a little Ziploc bag and pipe it in almost like I was doing cake frosting. But I want it to be thick because I don't want it running down the deck or anything like that. The whole purpose of this stuff is to get inside of that opening of the wood and fill it solid, and I don't want it all running out. So I'm going to make this stuff thick. Now here's where using a slow hardener is really helpful though, and I didn't, so I'm kind of racing against the clock here. Because the longer it takes me to keep mixing it and deciding if I need to add more, more this is already starting to, potentially start going into its pot life. So it'll start kicking shortly, which means getting hot and starting its chemical reaction. I'm close. It's still a little bit runny here. So I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit more in here. I'm getting low on my micro balloons here. All right, I've got this mixed up in a Ziploc, and now it's just a matter of cutting the corner out, piping it out like an icing bag. All right, so now it's just a matter of piping this stuff right in here. All right, I went ahead and made a little bit more progress than I thought I would here. I was able to not only do around the mast and fill in those wooden pieces I meant to there. Look at my hands sweating in those things. But I had enough left over, and it was good and thick, and it didn't pot as quick as I thought, which was great. It let me come back along this edge where I did the coach house, I'll show you in a minute, and really start to round that over and get it a little bit smoother and ready for the glass to lay up on. It'll make it a little bit more solid. Before I was going to have a couple of little tiny small pots or pits or little spaces behind the epoxy, which in the end, yes, it's void. If it was down below the water line, I might worry, but in this little spot, it would have been fine. But this gets it a little bit more solid, a little bit more smooth, and I like the way it's going to look. So when this hardens a little later, I'll just sand this down with some 80 grit, get it smooth, because again, micro balloons is not a fairing or easy sanding material. So that's going to be a little hard to do, but that's okay. I've said this a lot of times. I want this boat to look good from 10 feet away. If somebody decides to go over, lay on the deck, and look up at the lip below the coach house roof, and they see it's a little bit uneven, more power to them, and good, because I'm not that detailed a guy. So, yeah, I'm excited. This is a good step forward. So here's this spot right here along the bottom side of this coach house roof, and I just went ahead and put another layer in that, smoothed it over with the popsicle stick just to get it a little bit ready to go. I'll show you the base of the mast right over here and kind of how that looks as well. So you better see what I've done here. I basically just filled in behind this, and then I put a piece of tape on here to fill in these small gaps. What I'll do is look at right in this one. You can kind of see it right there. Forgive the shadow of the camera, but you can see how the epoxy is pooled right there with the micro balloons. And that will be a good solid surface for me to run my glass. Get this out of the way. For me to run my glass here and then up that side. So I'm just going to wait for that to cure. Well, let me go down below and kind of see what kind of progress the bride is making down in the salon as she's getting things squared away down there as well.
Hey, Deborah, what you up to? Give me a progress update, sweetheart.
Yeah, this is not easy because I'm missing a bag of hardware.
You having fun?
I'm going to
Shall I be
McKinley
recording?
helped me hang up some pictures. She picked out the placement.
Tell me what you've done today.
I've been playing when I was done helping Grandma to push that one on the wall.
Oh, let's see what you have.
To do that one.
Did you help hang the decorations?
Yes.
What are those, do you know?
Two. That one too.
Oh, let me turn around. I didn't even see that one over there. Let's see. And that one too?
And look, if you look closely, there is a baby koala on this toy on the model.
Well, in last week's video, you heard me say that my daughter bought a new mattress to go in last affair. So before she did that, I needed to go ahead and seal up all of these hatches. So I started by wiping everything down with acetone, and then I'm just using the sealant around these window frames. Now, all you purists will hate the fact that I'm using silicone on this. But unfortunately, the Bexon plastic framed ports on this boat require silicone as the bedding compound. I am, however, using it on these aluminum frame ports as well. So after I put it around the ports, I like to use a little spatula and just smooth it around all of the frames and make it nice and clean before cleaning up around the frames themselves. So you can kind of see right there where it's done. It looks good. I like the way that looks. So with that, we decided to go ahead and call it a day. We went back to the camper, and there's something really peaceful about watching a kid play. So McKinley was playing out at the picnic table, and it was just kind of cute.
Hey horse, come drink. I got a drink for you. It's sweet. Here in your cup.
Here's another reason having security cameras is interesting. We heard a couple of people talking and got the notification on the boat that there was activity outside of the boat. Then we saw this couple come on over and sat down, and they were talking about what the boat used to look like and that it used to have teak decks and it used to have that. So clearly these folks know something about the boat. It was kind of wild. The guys sat down a little bit on our steps, and I don't know, they were probably there for 6 or 7 minutes and then just kind of got up and said, oh, well, let's get out of here. It was kind of interesting.
So this morning, Gil had a little break in his schedule, so we decided to take his lunch break and bring our dinghy over to the yard to have it pulled out. Kind of sank a little bit a few weeks ago, so we definitely need to have some work done on it. So our lovely neighbors, David and Lee, allowed us to borrow her little starfish, which is cute as a bug, by the way, and haul over our dinghy using starfish. So that's what we're doing today. Sometimes boat life is really hard. Today is not one of those days, as we're enjoying a nice, as you can see, very calm, awesome, cool breeze on the water driving to the boat dock.
Like we got somebody anchored out here behind Brady Island. That looks like a nice little time.
A little bit of boat ramp.
So after pulling into this little inlet where the state park was, we just tied the dinghy up on the little dock by the boat ramp and then took the friend's dinghy back to the marina, picked up my trailer, and brought it on over to the boat ramp. What was interesting is, you know, I went ahead and did this by hand, just kind of pulled it up because the motor wasn't working. And as I was doing this, there was another boat that had pulled up, and there was kind of this older Cajun guy out there, and he offered to sort of help. Here's why you never accept it. Just listen to this little exchange as I asked him to toss the line onto the back of the boat as I pulled it out.
Come back! Back it up! Why? Back it up! Back it up! I gotta back it up! Ho! Let's get it! Down! Let's get it! Damn! What's got it? What's got it? What's got it? Shh, you pull it. Fuck, I'm an old man.
You're trying to pull it off the trailer.
That's what I was trying to do.
I'm trying to pull it out of the water.
So maybe he misunderstood, so I aligned the boat again, and then I just loosely laid it around the cleat here. So I go back into the car, and I look in the mirror, and I notice he's got the line in his hand, and he's walking forward with it again.
Oh my God, it's gonna get off you runners.
So I hear him saying it's going to get off the runners, which makes sense. He's walking forward, pulling the stern end of the line over. So again, I go back over here, straighten up the boat, and ask him to leave the line on the cleat loosely as I have it. And I just had it draped around the cleat. So I go back in the car again after draping it loosely here and ask him not to touch it. And then I notice again, he picks up the line and starts walking forward with it again. So this time I got a little bit annoyed. I went over and said, listen, I need you to stop doing it. Every time you pick it up, you're pulling the boat back over to the side. And he got a little bit ticked off about that.
I know what I'm talking about. I'm no fool. Here, you handle it. Shit, I'm tired of pulling on that son of a bitch. See, it ain't on this damn money. I told you, I tried to tell y'all. That's bullshit. I wasn't making on that line just then.
That's all right.
That's bullshit. That man was standing right there.
So all in all, it turned out to be a really weird experience. You can see the guy was all kind of pissed off. I was trying to be polite to him. I just wanted to get the dang dinghy out of there. I was driving 3 blocks back to our storage to do some work on it. So I think I'm going to leave this video on that fun little note. Thanks, y'all. Safe sailing. We'll see you later.